You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. It is so good to have LSU all-time great Ronald Dupree back in the purple and gold, even if he'll be wearing a suit, as the newly formed LSU basketball general manager. Ronald Dupree is good enough to join us for a couple minutes. Hey, man, it's been a minute. Great to have you back in Baton Rouge. Great to have you back on the show. How are you?
Man, I'm great. I'm excited. Full circle moment. Blessed. Just left for the Sweet 16 reunion, which is awesome to see. A lot of familiar faces, and then for this opportunity to kind of unfold, it's been wonderful.
Ronald, how did it come together?
Say it one more time.
How did this come together? When did this first opportunity first come on your radar?
Well, there's some former, I would say, executives that have left to go to other universities. And obviously in this NIL space and now eventual revenue sharing, I guess mandate will come down pretty soon here. But seeing guys leave for these jobs, like a gentleman from Boston, OKC, I think had 2 executives leave and go to university. So I'm thinking to myself, man, so how many is this GM position changing? Because they had the position the last 2 years, but it's been kind of a GM/assistant coach role. And, and it's just been a different role. But I think now going forward, is going to be more of a pro model position. And with that, there's a market. Wes Wilcox leaving Sacramento, was a former GM going to Utah. There's some notable names that in our league that decided to go to college. So it kind of piqued my interest. And the first thing I thought about was does LSU have a GM yet? You know what I mean? And watching the team this past season and how they ended at the SEC tournament, it was just kind of on my heart of like, hey, man, how can we improve the program? And like I said, coming back from the Sweet 16 reunion and seeing a lot of familiar faces, but at the end of the day, we lost that game to Texas at home, Yeah. Just kind of it being on my heart to like, how can I help out the program, continue to stay involved, and then with these executives leaving, it kind of piqued my interest. The next thing I know, I'm contacting and have a conversation with, our staff and administration.
So you reached out first to say, hey, would you be interested?
Well, I was contacted.
Okay.
But obviously there were some proper channels that had to be, had to go through first. But it piqued my interest for sure when I was contacted about it. And here we are.
So Ronald Dupree is our guest. So you, I'm guessing did you know Matt McMahon at all before this or before you were in for the reunion?
We met, funny enough, I think when Matt got the job, I had the family down for whatever reason. It might have been the Final Four in New Orleans, or for whatever reason, we were down in Baton Rouge at the Tiger Cage.
Okay.
Having the kids hang out. We were seeing Mike the Tiger, and I ran into Matt, like just walking. He had just got the job. I ran to him and a couple of his staff members, and that's when we officially met. But other than that, I didn't know him. It's not like we kind of talked on a regular basis. I've been hearing about him, and I heard how great of a guy he is. And I knew his background, come from Murray State. Isaiah Cannon played for him when he was on staff there. Isaiah's from Biloxi.
Mm-hmm.
I know John Morant, he helped, and he was on that staff when he was there as well. So I knew about him, but when we officially met, it was outside the Tiger Cage.
That's wild, man.
So So I don't know him well. I'm getting to know him now. Again, we would just cross paths. And so I obviously just saw him when I came down for the Sweet 16 reunion, and we kind of spoke again. But yeah.
For those who don't know Ronald, and Ronald Dupree is our guest, newly named LSU basketball general manager. You came back to LSU when your playing career was done. You were on staff in a support role then went to Nevada, then to the NBA. Can you pick up with 2017 when you went into the NBA front office working in scouting, like what you've been doing basically the past 7-8 years now in the NBA?
Yeah, man. So as a player, I played with Detroit for 3 seasons, right? Joe Dumars, GM, president, basketball operations at the time, gave me an opportunity to join the Pistons. And, we had a great run, had a great, established a great relationship with my teammates, and still to this day. And a lot of front office executives at the time, scouts, John Hammond was there. He was assistant GM. Scott Perry was a scout at the time. He had a few GM role positions. So we developed a great relationship, believe it or not, which is now probably less common, but at the time the facility was a one-level facility. So organically we would run into each other. I had ton of conversation with Scott Perry, and so I grew an affinity for the position of being a front office executive. Like when I was a player, my whole mindset was like, man, how can I be the next Joe Dumars? When I finished playing. So then fast forward, I'm finished playing. Johnny Jones offered me a job to coach, and I didn't know I didn't want to coach. Like that wasn't ever in the forefront of my mind as a player. But I fell in love with coaching, and Johnny gave me that opportunity, and I thought I'd be coaching in college for a while. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, hey, if the situation presents itself, I would love to get back to the NBA and be in the front office. So I'm in Nevada, and one of the guys that was with me, who was a video guy at the time in Detroit, this is 11 years later, he was, making his way up the ranks in the front office side, and he reached out to me and for an opportunity. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what team it was. And I was coaching at Nevada with Musselman, and he was like, hey man, you got any interest in coming to front office and scouting? I was like, yeah, you know what I mean? That's something I always thought about doing to begin with. And so he offered me the job, not knowing at the time that it would be Milwaukee. And the GM, current GM, John Horst, was an intern at the time when I was a player in Detroit. So my relationship with interns, with staff members, ended up paying off in that way where John hired me as a scout. So that's kind of how I got to Milwaukee. And for the first 4 years with just scouting, my title was a scout, but I moved in market to Milwaukee because of my relationship with John and with Ryan Hoover. And then eventually we won a championship at 21. They promoted me to director of global scouting, and that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years. So, man, just learning a ton in terms of evaluating talent. Agent relationships and fostering those. Agents are really a big part of the game right now, as we can see, not only in the pro side, but also in college. And just understanding process, driven decision making. John Horst is big in terms of process, each department having a say before we make decisions. We've hired a few coaches, but, just a ton of experience, a ton of great times, a few lows, but for the most part, we've been a championship contending team since we got here, and we are where we are today,
Championship winning team, 2021, of course. The Bucks were the NBA champion, and Ronald Dupree, part of that front office. Ronald, how does, and I know you played internationally as well, Germany, Italy, Israel, correct? Right?
Correct.
So how does, this is kind of the obvious question, right? And you've spoken to it a bit, but how does all of that experience, scouting and being the global director of scouting for the Bucks, how does that translate into whatever this role becomes at LSU?
I look at it going forward in college basketball. It will be a organizations, or I would say universities and programs that do it the right way. It will look like a pro model. And internationally, there's a market there for players, young players and young amateurs, because internationally, a lot of the young players that are on these EuroLeague, Euro Cup teams, they don't play a lot, but they're legitimate pro prospects for the NBA. But it's hard to tell whether they translate because they just don't play. You got to catch them in practice. You got to catch them at U19s or Basketball Without Borders events, or these national events where they do get to play, which is rare. And they don't get paid a lot. And so a lot of them want to display their talent. They're intrigued with college. They don't really have any restrictions for coming over from FIBA. So it's an untapped market, which, there's a lot of possibilities there. And so knowing who the GMs are, knowing those, in between people and agents and internationally, me playing over there, me going over there twice a year while being in Milwaukee, that all helps in terms of connecting those dots for that market. And that's Europe. Then you got Australia, you got Africa. That's an emerging market as well of talent. So these kids are eligible and able to play college sports. They've been playing against and training against pro players and grown men. And fundamentally, they're just a little ahead of us now in the States. And that's kind of been an issue that the NBA is trying to address as well. But see, all that experience and only God knows, sometimes I wonder as a player why, I didn't play in the NBA longer. But, it's funny how, what my expectations were for playing long in the NBA led me to a G League or D League stint, or it led me to Germany and it led me to Jerusalem and it led me to all these places. And now I can see, I guess God had a bigger plan, you know what I mean? And it's all kind of been very valuable for the knowledge for what the landscape will be like moving forward.
Definitely a full circle moment. Hey, before you go, let me ask you just a very direct question. Do you think LSU has the resources to be a national championship contending team in basketball?
One of the reasons why I took this position is I did my homework, I did my research, I called around, I asked our supporters to ask that same question. If the product is competitive and is the fan base, is the money there, the resources there to sustain success and support? And from what I gather, it is there. It is. There's opportunity there for this community to galvanize and get behind this program. But we got to put a product out there that people can get behind and be proud of. And that's a big goal of mine, to help Coach McMahon and administration and our staff. How can we continue to put a product out there that people will continue to support? And I think the revenue sharing piece will cap a lot of the inflation right now with the NIL numbers for individual players, which I think will also help. Now, when that ruling comes down, we're waiting for that, but if the structure is there where the revenue sharing can at least put, some restriction on these ridiculous deals, I think it will help a lot of programs stay competitive and at least be in the arena. Yeah, we'll never probably have the type of year in, year out money that Kentucky and the Blue Bloods have, but I don't think we have to. And I think there's ways that we can capitalize on the margins and find value. But as long as we're competitive and have competitive resources, I think we can be successful and sustain it.
He is LSU basketball general manager Ronald Dupree. Looking forward to doing this again somewhere down the road, man. Welcome back home. We appreciate so much a couple of minutes in what's definitely a busy time. Welcome back to Baton Rouge. We'll visit again soon, okay?
Awesome, man. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Tigers.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.